What's up, Dugout Nation? Today, we are joined by CJ Stewart, fired up to have him on the Dugout CEO podcast. CJ is the co-founder and visionary officer at Lead Center for Youth, a nonprofit organization in Atlanta, Georgia. He is the ambassador of the Players Alliance, a team focused on building equitable systems in order to change the trajectory of diversity throughout baseball, and a former professional baseball player and hitting instructor. CJ, welcome to the Dugout CEO.
I am so excited to be here with you, Casey. Been looking forward to it all week.
Yeah, likewise. Gosh, you were one of the first people I met when I moved to Atlanta back in 2012. And whenever I do something new, I always want to know people that are super impactful in the space I'm about to venture into. And I said, all right, who are the best people in the game of baseball in the city of Atlanta, and who are good people that are doing things that really matter? And your name kind of got brought up by pretty much everybody that I talked to. And eventually we met and kind of developed a really cool friendship and have done some cool things in business and life together. So it's just cool to, connect after a couple of years.
Yeah, I remember meeting you as well. I mean, you were the first person that I ever met that really exemplified what the business of baseball could be. And when people start thinking about baseball, I think we kind of look at it, strictly as a thing that's just for fun and for the love of the game. But, it is a business. And in order to do things well, it has to be treated as such. And so, before meeting you, I was really starting to meet a lot of good folks. Pat Alacqua, somebody I think about, Bill McClellan, and several others that were really starting to get me to think about, being more than just a baseball coach. And they were doing all this, but I just really didn't have a context around other like-minded people. So when I met you, I was saying to myself, like, you are the person that they were preparing me for. And, I believe I was ready. And that's the reason why our relationship was able to grow so quickly.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. So let's go back to CJ as an 8-year-old. You're a Cubs fan. I'm a Cubs fan. I think we kind of hit it off. I remember you telling me you used to grow up watching the Cubs on WGN with your grandpa. Like, talk to me about that. How'd you become a baseball kind of fan?
Yeah. And even as just, bringing that up, it just takes me to, 8 years old, 1984, the summer in Atlanta is hot. Mom and dad are, working. So I'm over at grandmama's house, grandmama done at 1757 Beecher Street, Southwest Atlanta. And it was just myself and my sister were there. And my grandmother would be, yelling at me, telling me to go outside and play. And I would. But what would happen was the Cubs, they would play those daytime games. And my granddad and I, we would sit in the room. He would be laying in the bed or something. And I would be kind of at the foot of the bed. And they had the television on their dresser. And then there was an air conditioner that was just kind of always loud and roaring because it was so. And, we're listening to these Harry Carey Cubs baseball games. I probably knew more about Harry Carey than the Cubs because he was just such a powerful voice. But anyway, I got his voice. I got the excitement of the Cubs. There are black players on the team, Gary Matthews in particular. And I just remember it was just so much peace in the house around that. That was the only time nobody was yelling at me about going outside, I guess because I was quiet. And then I would leave from there and play my own baseball game in the backyard. So I put myself at Wrigley Field. I had a bunch of rocks, a stick, throw them up in the air. I hit home runs. I struck out a few times. And then I would throw rocks to a tree to work on my pitching. So, 84 was a very special year. In addition to that, a couple other things. I remember Jesse Jackson was running for president, which for me as a young African American boy, being born and raised in a working class family in Atlanta, that was his plight, as he was a child and he was leading in Chicago. And I just remember thinking how crazy that was that a black man was running for president. So I said, if he's crazy enough to do that, let me just try to pay attention to him. But then also that was during the time as well with Adidas and Run DMC. And I remember the Adidas Forum Low shoes came out. I wanted them, couldn't get them because my mom and dad said that I couldn't, which basically probably meant that, we just weren't in a position to financially afford them. But 1984, I remember Cubs baseball, Jesse Jackson, and the Adidas Forum shoe coming out.
Crazy time. And I remember Gary Matthews. So it was Gary Matthews Jr. And then I guess his dad, and it was super cool to see father and sons in the big leagues and all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. Now, take us on the journey from you as a 8-year old, I guess, baseball player throwing up rocks in your backyard and hitting with sticks to, you ended up playing in the Chicago Cubs organization. Talk to me about that journey as a player.
So 8 years old, I'm busting out windows, and my family members were saying we need to get this kid into some baseball league. And I guess my aunts or somebody just told my mom and dad about Cascade Youth Organization, which was located in Southwest Atlanta. At the time, I was living in Northwest Atlanta. And so Southwest Atlanta was, a higher level of working class people from what I could see. And Northwest Atlanta, where I live, was just like really strictly working class and maybe a little bit lower. So the city was not only segregated by race, but it was also segregated by class within the African American community. Well, my grandmother lived in Southwest Atlanta, and fortunately, Cascade Youth Organization wasn't that far away. And so I go over there, and I got a chance to play baseball for the Cascade Youth Organization, or CYO Braves. And my three coaches were Emmett Johnson Sr., who was the chairman of the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education, Joshua Butler Sr., who was a well-known art teacher at Benjamin Elijah Mays High School, and then Gus Burns. I never knew what Coach Burns did for a living, but let's just say he was a full-time coach because he was always there. But me being on that team was so important because most of the players on the team came from two-parent households with one or both parents being college educated. And I've always had both my mom and dad in my life. My mom was 16 when she had me. My dad was 25. And, neither one of them had a college education, but definitely were hardworking and amazing people. But getting me put on that team changed the trajectory of my life and gave me a higher level of social capital that I continue to benefit from even to this day, saying that I played baseball for those three giants. And so I got an opportunity to play Little League Baseball, and then we moved to College Park when I was 11. Then I played baseball for the Old National A. And as I started to get even a little bit older going into high school, I started to play some travel ball. And, I wrote a book, called Living the Lead, A Life of Passion, Purpose, and Grit. And in the book, I talk about Antoine Smith very early in the book because he was one of my best friends in College Park. And I didn't find out until I was much older that he was selling drugs, and part of the money he was using to cover the cost for him and I to play travel ball. My mom and dad were absolutely amazing. Both of them are still alive and doing well, but they weren't going to invest financially in me to pursue my dream of playing for the Cubs because that was my whole focus. I'm out here playing, trying to get better and do all the things that I can to ultimately do that. So, I was following Antoine's lead. I mean, we were 12 years old, and it was kind of like, whatever you decide to do, that's what I'm going to do. I remember one summer, at this point, we were probably about 14, 15, and we were playing on some different teams. Wherever he said for me to go, I would just go, and he was paying the way. And I remember I was playing against a predominantly white team, and there was a kid named Patrick Miller who was on one of the opposing teams. I think we were about, like I said, 15 or so. And next thing I know, Antoine is saying, hey, we're going to go play with them. So now, we're playing on this team. Ultimately, I end up being the one that continued on with the team. I had good coaching, but if I didn't have advocacy that superseded the coaching, and if I didn't have sponsorship that superseded the mentoring, I would have never got drafted.
Yep. I can see that and see how all this is leading into what you've done with Lead. Before we jump into that, let's talk about Diamond Directors because that's how we originally got connected. We had this baseball academy, and I'm like, all right, you're the best guy in town on teaching players how to hit. And I'm like, all right, I got to get to know you. And then I saw the way you work with players, and you've worked with MLB All-Stars. The list of clients is, a mile long. In baseball, as a hitter, whether somebody's listening to this and they're a player or they're a coach, what is it that makes great hitters great? I guess you got the physical aspect of it, but you also got the mental aspect of it. Talk about the mental aspect of it first. To be a major league all-star, what is the mental side of the game that these hitters and you teach them?
Yeah, so the answer to that is knowing how to think. And if learning how to hit is not hard, it's pretty easy. But knowing how to think is the part that really is the hardest. And so with Diamond Directors, our mission still remains to provide the blueprint of success for diamond sport athletes. So even when we use words like blueprint, that is a literal thing. So if you ask me what the blueprint is, I can actually show it to you, and I can tell you where we are, what's next, and so on and so forth. But even, many, many years ago, when we start attaching the word lab to what we do, rather than a hitting lesson, you do a hidden lesson, then that begets another hidden lesson and another hidden lesson. Well, when we started using the terminology lab, and it's something that's very common today, that forced me to be accountable for the development, making sure we had specific goals and making sure we had a roadmap. I had to make promises and guarantees. And if it got to a point where I couldn't deliver, then we would end the relationship. So it wasn't, we had to get away from just making money and make impact. And you can do both, but if you make impact, you'll make more money. So again, going back to the question, if you want to be an all-star, you an elite, and not only in baseball but in life, you got to know how to think. And so Peter Alonso is a good case in point. I got connected with Peter when he was 17 years old, and he was on my team in Cary, North Carolina for the Team USA trials. And I was the hitting coach for the pony team. Derek Simmons was the manager. Derek Simmons currently is an assistant coach at the University of Indiana. And I coached him when he was 8 years old, all the way up through high school. So he now asked me to be the hitting coach on this team. And I'm like, absolutely. But it was so cool to now be working for him rather than when he was a kid working with him. So Peter Alonso's on the team, and Peter does not make the USA team. Peter then was a pretty heavy kid, wasn't very strong at third base, and had a lot of upside as a hitter. He was actually putting so much pressure on himself to be a better fielder that I felt like it was really distracting him from being the best hitter that he could be. And so when he came in to train with me for the first time in Atlanta over at DBAT Buckhead, the spot that you own, it was awesome because he walked in and other than just a cordial, hey, how are you doing? Nobody knew that was going to be the future. So if you look at a box, and let's say on the right side of the box at 3 o'clock is failure, which means I did it wrong. At 6 o'clock is an adjustment, which means I'm going to do something different. And then at 9 o'clock, it is success, which means I did it right one time. And then at 12 o'clock is repeat, which means that I did it right 6 out of 10 times. So what I was trying to get him to understand, first of all, is you got to humble yourself enough to know that what you're doing is wrong. Like, no sugarcoating it. If the swing is wrong, the swing is wrong. Now the next best thing to do is to do something different. Don't do the stupid thing when you do something wrong, which is trying to have success, because that's going to cause frustration. When you do something wrong, make the adjustment, which means do something different than what you just did. It could even be a different kind of wrong. Just don't do that same wrong thing again. So then making adjustments will lead towards you having success. And when we say success, we're talking about you did it right one time. Now, when you did it right one time, the next best thing is to focus on repeating it 6 out of 10 times, rather than the stupid thing when you do it right is to try to do it better. So a lot of times that's what ends up happening, where it's like all of a sudden that the hitter has really worked to get to a point where, okay, I've done it right. And then they try to do it better. And then that causes frustration. But then as a big leaguer in particular, and if you have this mindset, even at 12 years old, you're definitely going to be a big leaguer, is when you have success, you're chunking it out into a group of 10. So now it's not, if you don't get a hit on the next at bat, then you're a failure. I'm going to lump all of this into 10, because at the end of the day, if you can hit the ball hard 6 out of 10 times, you're going to get a base hit 30 to 40% of the time. So that's just kind of the mindset focus that I have on the players, because I believe that hitting is simple, but if I can really help them take control of how to think about it, this happens, so what's next? Then it really allows them to not only perform, but build a capacity that they need for longer periods of time. Because lastly, if you're a big leaguer and you got 500 at bats and you're chunking them out in 10 at bats, that's a lot more manageable than trying to then be focused on every single at bat.
I remember watching you do some lessons with, a few different former All-Stars, and very few times did you just jump in there and start hitting the ball. And I'm like, all right, I just want to sit here and watch them hit, because it was a thing of beauty. And you just kept talking and talking and talking. And now it's clicking of the why. It's, you got to teach people how to think. Do you think in general that is true with business people? The majority of people that are listening to this, CJ, are, they're a business owner, or they're a leader, or they're a head coach. Do you think a lot of people actually work on their thought process of how to do what they're going to do, or do they just jump in and start taking action before thinking through what is the best way to do whatever it is they're going to do?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you can, it's a quote that says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So, you, if you don't know the right route, you'll get going. But the problem is if you're unlucky and take the wrong route, then it's going to cost you a lot of time and money. And so, that's why for me, I created a critical change construct. And so this construct for me, even when I wrote my book in 2015, because I really wanted to make sense of how I've gotten to this place of having success. And if I can understand how I've had success, then I can be significant. And so the difference between success and significance is now your ability to serve others. But you can't give what you don't have. So if I don't know how I became successful, and especially as I'm serving Black boys in the inner city of Atlanta through Lead Center for Youth, the last thing that they need is a Black man that can't explain how he got to where he got. So this critical change construct, everything that I do starts with conviction. It leads to a connection, and then it leads to consensus, then collaboration, and then we can have change. So conviction is really dealing with the heart and the why. Why are we doing this? This is where we do our storming. This is where we can be frustrated and have some really consequential dialogue. And a lot of people don't want to start there. What'll happen is what people will do is they'll start with, here's the change we want. Let's collaborate. And then when the collaboration is getting shaky, you know what? We need to have a consensus around what to do. And so, we'll come in each other's office and talk about it. And then when that's not working a week later, then we need to get connected. And then we got to book a trip for some kind of retreat to some island and spend tens of thousands of dollars so that we can get convicted. So rather than waste all of that time for that to happen and waste all that money on the back end, let's go to the island right now. So it's like, Casey, why do you want me on this show? Why do you want me working with you at DBAT? And then vice versa, Casey, and just really having these really hard conversations, because then what's going to happen is now we get connected at the head. So the heart before the head. And then now that we're connected, now we can actually have a consensus around what to do. So now this is where promises and guarantees are being made. So working with you and starting from a place of conviction and connection, you made promises to me that you delivered on that is still paying benefits for me even to this day. And then now we can get collaborate. Now we can collaborate, and at that collaboration level, now that we've made the promises, now you have full access to my network and I have full access to yours. And I'm not going to sleep trying to figure out if Casey is shady or not. And if for some reason Casey does start showing up shady, then we're going to go back and start over again from a place of conviction. So I think that's what happens to a lot of business owners. And quite frankly, one of the reasons why I'm a leader when it comes down to baseball on the for-profit business and nonprofit It's because of having healthy relationships with business minded people like you. Like nobody is going to make it in your space if they don't want to work. If all they want to do is just throw some baseballs and put it on a tee, they're not going to work well with you. Well, because I was able to go beyond that and show you something, then you were able to also help me expand my network to be able to do other things.
And one of the things I've seen that's so good, CJ, one of the things I've seen from you is I've seen vision, I've seen ideas, I've seen thoughts, I've seen you say, this is what we're going to do. But then you oftentimes actually do it. When I work with a lot of people, a lot of visionaries, business owners, they're the idea person, but the things they talk about don't necessarily get done. What is it in your organization that makes you different? The things that you do talk about actually go from idea to a reality.
Conviction. I mean, I gotta be convicted about it at the heart level to the point where I will defend it and I will protect it. And that's with anything that I'm gonna be able to do. So there are other things that I could be doing other than being here with you right now, but I feel like this is a part of my calling. And so it allows me to say no to the things I'm not supposed to be doing. So conviction. With Diamond Directors, I was so convicted in that I did not have the long lasting professional career that I wanted to have, that I felt like I should have had, because I did not have coaches with me that were called and had the capacity to take me on this journey. And so the word coach, before it was used in sports, strictly meant a means of transportation. So there was a horse, there was a coachman who steered the horse, and then the coach was the compartment that you would sit in. So I was saying, for me with Diamond Directors, like I am directing, I am in charge. Like whoever it is, I don't care if Andrew McCutcheon is coming in there with me, Jason Hayward, Dexter Fowler, and all the resources that they have. What I'm saying for everybody is I am leading the way on this to get you to the major leagues or to get you to play at the University of Georgia. And at that point, if the family said, well, we don't want you to be in charge, well, we don't work together. Because, we got to get convicted. Like, God is telling me to do this. I actually had one client one time who said that he did not want his son to work with me because he felt like it was too spiritual. So I'm not trying to baptize anybody or get them to become a follower of Christ or anything like that. But my relationship with God is, if this is what you want me doing, you need to provide everything that I need so that I can be impactful.
I'm almost convicted myself, and I'm looking back at my wins in business and some of the things that, quite frankly, didn't turn out to plan. And the things that I did win on that were major successes were the things I was convicted in. I love doing. I felt called to it. And then there's these other businesses. Hey, I want to start this business or invest a little money here. Or, hey, this person has an idea. I want to invest in them. But I don't know if the businesses that I invested in that didn't work, the person I invested in was convicted. So I think that's just so big, CJ. If you're going to do something and spend your time on it, be convicted. If you're going to invest in somebody else that's doing something, you got to make sure they're convicted, because without that conviction, that vision that you have or what's possible probably won't become a reality. So
And
that's
speaking
just
to
really
that,
good.
like having the person convict you. So when we were doing Diamond Directors, started in '98, so around 2007, at this point, I mean, I've developed now using our at bats methodology. I've developed to date 43 major leaguers, okay, that have been a part of that methodology. And so we're 9 years in, coming up on 10 years. And one of my clients, Stan Conway, Stan is the father of Davis Conway. Stan was and still is a very successful commercial real estate developer, and his son Davis at the time was in middle school. Stan is a white man. Davis is his white son. And the race matters because I remember Stan telling me, because at this point, lead didn't even exist. Speaking about conviction, Stan said, CJ, he said, you're good, but if you were as good as you said you were, your rates wouldn't be so low. So that hit me hard and it hurt because I was competing with my competitors at the time on cost. So one of the reasons why I was able to get a lot of people to come and train with me is because one week my lessons then at that time would have been $20 an hour. and then I might move him up to 50. But if my competitor would have moved his to $15 an hour, I would have moved mine to 10. So what he was really teaching me then that really makes sense now is that you can't be the best and the cheapest at the same time. The second thing that he did that really convicted me was he said, CJ, if you were as good as you said you were, and you are good, but if you were that good, it shouldn't be so easy for people to get access to you. He was like, somebody can just call you off the street tomorrow and just be in here with you tomorrow. You need to have a process in place where it's not just easy for people to get your time, because then you'll end up just spreading yourself thin and saying yes to a lot of the wrong things and no to a lot of the things that you should be doing. And then the last thing that he said, as a white man, that convicted me, he said, CJ, there's a decline of blacks in baseball and you're not doing anything about it. Here I am from Northwest Atlanta, born and raised in a working class family, and I'm spending all of my time in the suburbs making children in the suburbs the best that they can be, and not spending any time nor even having a prayer for the kids that were black and poor in the inner city of Atlanta. And so that's how we got started doing lead. And so I remember the nights that I couldn't sleep after he told me that. And the only reason why I can sleep now is because I feel like I'm fulfilling my calling. And even in the Bible, I mean, you when they talk about visionaries, a lot of times, these prophets, which is beyond just predicting the future, but also challenging the status quo. A lot of times they would have these visions from God, and then they would have sleepless nights. So one of my things is hey, I know I'm really convicted. If I get something that I feel like I want to do, and I can't sleep, then lastly, my conversation with God is if it's your will, then it's also your bill. So you need to make sure that if I'm saying yes, and this is something I'm convicted and called to do, then you provide and give me the resources and the people to do it.
CJ, talk to us about lead, that conviction that you have for lead, what you guys are doing today, what you're envisioning for the future.
Yeah, so LEAD stands for Launch, Expose, Advise, Direct. And we are a 501c3 sports based youth development organization located here in Atlanta. And we were established in 2007. And our mission is to empower an at risk generation to lead and transform their city of Atlanta by using the sport of baseball to help black boys overcome three curveballs that threaten their success: crime, poverty, and racism. And so our website is Lead Center for Youth. And so even breaking down that mission, that's our mission. Our vision is for our lead ambassadors. These are our program participants, the highest level. Our vision is for them to lead their city of Atlanta to lead the world. The word empower in our mission, that means to give responsibility and authority. So I don't have a whole lot of time to break down the full scope of our programming. But when you look at our programming, our black boys who are living in poverty, underperforming in grades, attendance, and behavior, they have responsibility and authority within our organization, which helps them to become lead ambassadors and major league citizens.
What really is cool, what you've been able to accomplish. I've seen it firsthand. So, CJ, keep up the great work. Where would our listeners go to learn more? I know you dropped a website earlier. Maybe mention it one more time, and anything else you guys got kind of in the works that you want to let our listeners
Yeah,
know about, please
so
do
our
so.
website is leadcenterforyouth.org. And so we're having our next open house at the Lead Center for Youth on Saturday, July 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And if you want to come in on a tour of our amazing facility in the West End, you can reach out to our program director, Bree McClendon. And her email is Bre dot McClendon, MCCLENDON at Lead Center for Youth. And Casey, I can give you that email as well. But then also, we really want folks to come and join us for our ninth annual Safe at Home game on Saturday, August 8th at Georgia Tech. It's going to be at 11 a.m. And so that is an amazing, unique game that we have with our lead ambassadors that play a self-officiated baseball game against the Atlanta Police Department, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Atlanta Public Schools Police, and Georgia Tech Police. And this game was born out of the killing of Mike Brown and Ferguson several years ago. And this year is going to be the first year we actually have one of our lead ambassadors play for law enforcement, because now he's a full-time officer with the Atlanta Police Department.
Dugout Nation, wow. CJ, what a servant leader. Can't thank him enough for his time today. There are big problems out there in the world, and CJ has used some of his pain and experiences to better the lives of others in entrepreneurship and leadership and mentorship. And he found a problem. He woke up daily to solve it. And I wish we had more people that had that level of conviction in what they do. So be sure to check out more of what they're doing at leadcenterforyouth.org as they lead their sports-based youth development programs that are inspiring and equipping Black girls and boys with the empowerment they need to live sustainable lives of significance. So here are my takeaways that I got from CJ. Number one, have conviction above all else. If you don't have conviction, you will fail. Either you will give up when it gets tough, or the people that are following you won't be bought in because they don't see you're all in. Conviction starts with why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Most people start with why, then they start to collaborate and work with others to create change. But that's the wrong order. Be convicted first, then start to connect with people and make sure they're convicted as well. Then you can get on the same page, on the same team, and then start collaborating. And when I look back at my biggest wins, it's because I was all in and I had conviction. And my biggest losses is I was investing in others that weren't convicted. Number two, teach people how to think. Back at our baseball academies, we would have CJ in a cage with Jason Hayward, with Dexter Fowler, with Pete Alonso, and I just see them talking and talking and talking. They'd be in there for 3 or 4 hours, and they might do 30 minutes or 45 minutes of hitting. Learning how to think is the top priority. And when he spent time working with these athletes, they were in the cage thinking about the game. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So you have to be really clear of where you want to go and what route's going to get you there. Because if you just jump in the cage and start doing something, jump in the boardroom and start doing something without understanding where you're going and the best way to get there, you're going to spend a lot of time, energy, and money in the wrong direction. Number three, if you are great at what you do, charge a premium price. You can't be the best and the cheapest. If you have a track record of success in what you do, if people want it bad enough, they will pay. Only work with people that can pay top dollar, because the ones that invest the most in themselves will get the most out of it. If you are not the best in the world at what you do, you need to first believe you can be. And the first step is believing you will be. Get others around you that believe in you, that will help you become the best, and then charge premium fees for a premium service.